Hey there, and welcome to episode 2 of the Career Mastery Conversations podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the economic recession and inflation and all this crazy economic drama that seems to be happening out there in the world and is filling the news and social media and inadvertently a lot of people like you and I with a lot of fear and uncertainty about what exactly 2023 and beyond holds for us. So it wasn't bad enough that we lived through several years of a global pandemic. It was pretty awful time for everyone in the world pretty much. And now we come out of it. All right, cool. We're out of lockdowns. We can go mostly back to our lives. Then all of a sudden there's a war going on in Europe and, interest rates are going through the roof and, there's an economic downturn essentially on the horizon, and inflation is happening, and the supply chain issues are still a really big factor. There's still global supply chain issues, but also in Australia, at least, we've had a whole bunch of floods and things like that, which have made supply chain issues really difficult, which have affected the cost of everyday goods. Like we had floods here in Australia, and you couldn't get, I think, potatoes or something, or lettuces, or it's changed. Like every few months, there's something new. There's something. There's a new challenge and a new dramatic issue that's affecting the world. So it's pretty crazy times. Obviously COVID is still out there doing its thing, but the big ticket thing on everyone's agenda is what's going to happen this year with a recession and global recession. So, if you're in the States or the UK, I'm sure it's the same as happening here in Australia, which is interest rates are going up. So to fight inflation, as they're saying, they're pushing interest rates up to make people cut spending, to try and cut the supply or try to reduce, the demand for goods and services, which will hopefully bring the costs down. I'm not an economic, expert by any means, but, this is what I understand to be the situation of what's going on. So, they're upping interest rates to fight inflation because inflation, is really bad for businesses, but it's also bad for people. It can affect currency and all this kind of stuff. Again, I don't understand any of that. But also what's going to happen with the recession, if in fact a recession comes, is that, with interest rates being so high, it's going to make people reduce their spending. It's going to put a lot of stress on households to have mortgages or any sort of interest-related debt, so credit cards as well. Credit becomes expensive in the economy, so the cost of borrowing money is more expensive, which can affect businesses and what businesses can do and how much they can borrow to grow their business, which affects jobs. And obviously all of these things like inflation and increased interest rates, which reduce consumer spending, are affecting businesses because people aren't spending as much money, which means that businesses are starting to cut jobs. So we've already seen that happen. You see headlines for all these big companies in the States like Amazon, I think Bank of America, Google, Microsoft, I think, maybe not Microsoft, I can't say that for certain, but I've seen for sure Facebook, Snapchat, just saw this week, Salesforce, big tech companies that for many years seemed completely untouchable from any sort of economic contraction. These companies produce and make so much ridiculous amounts of cash. Like it's unbelievable how much money these tech companies make. And it's fair to say that even though they are cutting jobs because of doom and gloom out there in the economy and people spending less money, they're still going to make plenty of money. So I wouldn't start feeling sorry for them too quickly. Definitely feel sorry for the people who have lost their jobs. That's really difficult for them and their families. So, my heart goes out to those people. But these big companies, they're going to be doing fine. But essentially, it does mark a very measurable change or noticeable change in the wider economy of these big companies starting to fire people essentially or make them redundant, especially companies like Facebook. It's their first round of large redundancies apparently since their inception, which is pretty significant. So anyway, there's all this news out there about jobs being cut and people spending less money and inflation and interest rates and all that sort of thing. More importantly, what does it mean for you? What does it mean for you? And what does it mean for your career in 2023? So you're out there, you want to keep earning money. You want to keep your job. You don't want to be caught up in what's happening, but there are forces happening beyond all of our control. And it's really important that we understand what's happening. But even better than that, that we try and have a plan for what's coming in 2023 and 2024 and beyond, because we all thought COVID was going to be around for a few months. I know I certainly did when we all got told to pack up our things pack up our desks and go and work from home. We all thought, this is going to be a couple of weeks and then it'll all blow over. 2 years later here in Melbourne, Australia, we were still in lockdown. So the idea that any of this economic carnage is going to, I guess, go away, and I shouldn't use the word carnage because I don't want to play into the fear to the full extent that the media plays into it. But I do think it's important to be aware of what's happening around you. And I don't think that what's happening in the economy is going to be necessarily going away or playing down anytime soon. So again, I think it's really important that we have this conversation and that we really start to think about what we can do about it and start to make put practical plans into place so that we can start to feel more comfortable or a bit more prepared for what's happening. So, I'm by no means a financial planner or a financial advisor, so don't take any financial advice from me, but I can tell you what I'm starting to do. And for context, I'm in a pretty decent job for a big multinational company, so I think that they should be able to weather the storm. I'm relatively new to this company. I only started last year, but I like to think that my job is pretty secure, but again, who knows? No one's job is completely set in stone. Even if you're contracted in a job, they can slash a contract to pay you out, and then you start looking for a new job. So regardless of who you are and where you work and how much you're paid, I think it's really important to think about, what lies ahead for you. So I know in terms of what I'm doing, so I'm trying to save as much money this year. So I've really tried to cut my spending back. That means I've looked at bills, I've looked at my insurance, I've looked at what we pay in utilities, seeing if we can try and switch providers. I've looked at discretionary spending and try to cut that down almost completely. So whether it's going out or even coffees at work, little things like this, they really do add up. When you do a budget and you put the numbers in a spreadsheet and you look at, okay, cool, you're making good money, let's say, but you're still spending $5-6 on a coffee. You're having 3 coffees a day when you go into the office because you need to be caffeinated. Let's be honest, we need to be caffeinated. But can you make that coffee at home? Can you bring in, does your work have a pod machine? Those coffee pods. Can you just suck it up and drink some instant coffee, put some stevia in it? Doesn't taste that bad. If you ask me, I'm not too snobby about coffee. I'll drink the good stuff, but I also like the cheap stuff. So little things like that, where can you start to pull back? Can you, I go into the office 2 days a week, and even then the coffees, because it's a social aspect with people I work with, but also buying lunches. It's easy to be caught up in that, but really no one cares if you don't get a coffee with them. Really, if someone says, do you want to go for coffee? And I've already had the 1 or 2 that I budget for the day, I'll still go with them for the walk. I won't get a coffee, but I'll come, we'll have a chat, we'll still catch up, which is really the most important part about being in the office and seeing your coworkers, is connecting with them, both on a personal and a professional level. I try to bring my lunch in. I try to make it at home. I meal prep for the week just to save money, and it's also more efficient from a time perspective. But again, like I said, I've looked at my bills. I've really cut back on putting money in my investments this year, so I'm really into putting money in stocks. I run a self-managed portfolio, for better or for worse. We'll find out in the long run. So I've stopped putting money into that, even though things are looking quite cheap because already a lot of stocks are down, and my portfolio is bleeding at the moment, which I would expect given the situation of the economy, and a lot of my portfolio is in more higher risk things. I've cut back. I'm not putting any money in. I'm trying to save a bank of cash. So again, I'm not giving you financial advice, but I think it does make a lot of common sense with the uncertainty that's out there, that you really start to have a plan in place, and that might mean having your cash reserves a little bit higher than you usually would. But also in terms of having a plan, on that cash aspect, I think some people have said having 3 to 6 months up your sleeve of your salary. It's a lot of money to have just stored away, but you could lose your job. You've got no idea how long it's going to take you to find another job. So quick story, I was made redundant in one of my first professional jobs, which is 6 years ago now. We were all made redundant. So I worked for a very small digital marketing agency, and the boss just decided he wanted to shutter the business and move on to other projects. And there was nothing that we could do. There was no talking him out of it. There was only 5 or 6 of us that worked there: a designer, ops manager, myself, looking after content, and a videographer as well. So small business. He said, one day we're closing the business and I'm doing other things. So nothing we could do. And it was towards the end of the year. It was about November. It's like 2017, I think it was. So again, the economy was in a pretty decent place, at least back then. November, we lost our jobs. I got a lot of interviews in December for digital marketing roles and copywriting roles. I thought, oh man, I'm hot stuff. Everyone wants to interview with me. Was really looking promising. The appetite for my skill set was looking really strong in the market. But no one was willing to make a hiring decision because it was December and people were getting ready to close for the end of the year. And I thought, all right, cool. I'll touch base with these people in the new year and see what happens. Come January, crickets. None of these people, many of them weren't hiring again, or they filled the role. Some just never got back to me. Some just completely ghosted me, which was a real dog move to do. Especially for interviews that I had face-to-face interviews for, I was pretty disrespectful in my opinion, looking back, that people didn't, feel the need to get back to me and confirm that they either had hired for it or they were no longer hiring. So that's something you might deal with if you end up looking for a new job. So there's that. But then it took me to about March to actually land a new job. So I was out of a job December, January, February. So 3 months without salary. If you've got mouths to feed, you've got children, it's a long time. And to be fair, I did get one job offer in December, but it wasn't a good fit and I turned it down. So when I came to February, you could bet your bottom dollar I was pretty regretful that I didn't take that job. But in the end, I ended up getting that job in March and it was a way better fit. And I was there for 4 years and it was fantastic. Made a ton of friends, did some great work. And that gave me leverage into the job that I am in now, which is fantastic. So long-winded story. I can't even remember how I got onto that story, to be honest. But I think, the point I was making was around, you never know how long, if you're out of a job, how long it's going to take you to land a new job, You say, oh, cool, I don't want to be picky. I've got kids. I just want to take the first thing that comes. Or you want to wait for the right role, which I highly recommend. But if you've got bills to pay, what can you do? It's a very hard situation. So if you've got that money up your sleeve, if you've got those cash reserves, it can buy you a bit of time to wait for that right job to come around. So there's that. So have a plan, cash up your sleeve, cut your spending, look at your bills, look at your utilities. Where can you save? Discretionary spending, that new car you want, that new camera, that new guitar. It's going to have to wait, I would say, until things calm down and you've got a good line of sight on where the place you're working stands in the economic environment that we're going into in 2023 that we're in 2023. And also it's going to take us into 2024. But it doesn't hurt even to start having as part of your plan, brushing up your resume. Start thinking, what are the things in your current role? What are your achievements? What are the data points that you can get now that you're still in the role and those data points are available to you that you can start putting into your resume as achievements? When I say data points, I mean maybe revenue you've made for the company, maybe percentage increases in efficiency or profitability or improved ways of working with other team members. Start thinking about who could be a reference for you if you all get made redundant from your roles. Start to think about this now. It doesn't mean you have to quit your job. It just means that if your worst case scenario does occur, you've got cash in the bank ready to find that next great role. Like you've bought yourself time to wait, to stick it out to find that next great role. And you've got a resume ready to go. You've got good data points that speak to your achievements in your last role that you can back up, that you can back up some of the anecdotes you might use for those behavioral-based questions to talk about why you're a great fit for the role that you're interviewing for. So that's my thoughts on the recession and inflation and how to prepare yourself and your career for what lies ahead in the next couple of years. So none of us know what's going to happen. None of us saw a global pandemic happening. No one can predict what's going to happen with inflation and the recession and interest rates going up and up. So the best way to do is prepare for the unknown by stacking your cash, getting your resume prepared, start thinking about companies that you could even apply for, start really, and also in your role, start becoming even more indispensable. Try to add more value to your role, to the company you work for, doing things that are going to help drive bottom line revenue and sales, become really indispensable to the sales machine of your business. And you just really put yourself in a good position to recession-proof your career. So that's it for today's episode. Hope you really found it valuable. If you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to shoot a comment below about your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed it. And I'll see you again in the next episode. Cheers.